Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a tips and tricks video for Cuisine Royale. Now I'm going to be showing you a number of different tips based on the control systems for some interesting things that I found, and to do this I'm going to be doing it in the practiced arena just so I don't get killed in the middle of it, and I thought it might be fun to do it while dressed in my Prawn suit, which is what I wear when I'm on Twitch on Friday and Saturday just for lols. And so I found a number of interesting things going on in the control system. Now obviously this is on PC, I'm not sure what it's going to be like on console, whether this will be useful to you if you're on console, but there are a number of things that I wanted to talk about that involve basically changing the controls. Now there are various things you can do to improve the control system and to make your life easier when you're playing games, especially if you're playing with people. There's loads of different menus in here. One of the basic things that I do, for example, is that I have changed my mark enemy button from whatever the default is to mouse button 5. So that's the front mouse button on my mouse. I can easily press when I see an enemy, so if I'm aiming down the sight like this, I see an enemy over there, I can just mark where they are, and you can do it really quickly, and then I can start shooting at the enemy, and that poor guy over there is now bleeding because I shot him in the back of the leg. That makes it really easy for you to mark where your enemies are, and therefore make it really easy for people to see. Another thing that you can do is that you can press a marker, put a marker down that's a bit more obvious, and you can do this by going into the map and pressing and holding Alt and then clicking in that location, or you can do it from the menu system. Now don't worry, things are going to get a bit more exciting than that, but that's a hint for teammates, so you can do that with a hint for teammates. Now one of the things I found that I've noticed is that you can have two keyboard buttons, so you can have two buttons for each of these actions. So for example, you see here there's another one, you could set up a completely different button, so you could have another button on there. You can also click down here on button setup and you can set different variations of this, so you can see you can have it reacting to a single press, holding that button down, double tapping the button, triple tapping it, releasing it, and all these other things. Interesting for a number of different reasons. A basic, slightly crazy one is what I'm going to show you here. Grenade as standard is G. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it space, which conflicts with jump, but what I want to do is I'm going to change it to triple tap. Now the reason I'm doing this, now this is a bit nuts and it did backfire for me, but it's an example of how this might work. So now what I've got is I've got space for jump, so I can jump, I can run up here, and in the usual way I can just jump and grab onto the side of a building. But if I'm in a gunfight with someone, they're over here, there's loads of them, oh my god, I'm panicking, I'm suddenly jumping loads. You're jumping up and down loads while firing, maybe trying to avoid getting shot because you're in your last magazine or you're right down to the end, and now I'm chucking grenades while I'm shooting, just giving it the good grenades. And that is one way of doing it, and an interesting way, I think, potentially. Other interesting things that you can do are, you can see weapon setup for me is weapon 1, weapon 2, weapon 3, weapon 4. Weapon 4, if you press 4, it brings out my melee weapon, my hammer. I want to be able to access my hammer really quickly and easily. Now another thing that you have in the control scheme is you have somewhere melee is the middle mouse button. So the middle mouse button, like you see, that just hits with your weapon, which doesn't do as much damage. I think if I run up behind somebody, okay, that's one hit kill because I'm behind them. You get in front of them, it doesn't do as much damage as the hammer does, which does a substantial bit more. So these guys not got armor on, the donk hammer, one hit, he's down. So you can see it makes a bit different. So what I wanted to do is, if you go in controls, what you can do is you can assign this to your middle mouse button instead. Now the reason you're doing this is that now when I do that swing with my weapon, it automatically changes to my hammer. So yes, the first hit is still with your weapon, but because it switched to the hammer, it means it's a lot easier to then carry on hitting. So the first hit is still only does a little bit of damage, but now my hammer's out, so the second hit is definitely going to down him. This is obviously a lot more useful if you have an axe, a machete, or a hammer, because they do a lot more damage. If you only have a knife, it's not going to be as effective. If you've got the pan, it's super effective. Other things that I've got, now if you look at my sprays, you can see it's marked in the game already for you. You have 1, 2, and 3 as the sprays. So 1 is ice shield in my case, 2 is grenade, 3 is link portals. So if you bring that up and then press 1, it does that spray. That's obviously, you've got to bring up the wheel and then press a button. But what you can do is you can go into the control system here, draw sign. Draw sign 1 is U, H, and then 3. But what you'll see here on the right hand side is that I've made it so press and hold F is draw sign 1, eye shield. Press and hold 2, which is my secondary weapon, is grenade trap, and then press and hold 3 is the teleport portal. Now the reason I'm doing this is actually, one, I want to make it easier for me to do it, because trying to remember all those different controls is a pain, and also the other reason is I want to make it so that I basically have multiple actions. So if I'm pressing to switch weapons, I can press and hold to do those. Now if you go into one of these other systems, you'll see recover is an option. Now recover is when you're getting your teammates up, so you're pressing that button to get your teammates up. Pressing and holding F to revive a fallen teammate, and I've got a clip of this that I will show. And for demonstration purposes, that puts down an ice shield. And I had the thought that if I am in the process of reviving a teammate who has just been shot at, there is a chance they are still being shot at, and I might need protection while reviving them, and they might appreciate it too. But rather than having to get up my wheel and put an ice shield down the traditional way, or to get up and press that button, I want it to be able to basically have one action based on one button press. So I'm doing one thing and I'm getting 2 actions out of it. I'm trying to revive my friend who's down on the floor, and an ice shield pops up to defend us. So it's this sort of logic that you can apply to this system of controls that isn't immediately obvious, and it certainly isn't as default, but that you can set up. You can have 2 buttons, but you can have it based on the press and hold or double tap or whatever else. So obviously this is what I'm doing, but you can do other things. Another thing that I have done in the interface menu is the hint for teammates. So you can see hint item for teammates, which, as I showed you a minute ago, is put a little marker on the map. You can actually do, what I want to do is this, aim down the sight, but I'm going to change it to double tap. Now what I'm doing here is if I do aim down the sight double quickly, it puts that more effective marker on the location of where the enemy is, and therefore people can see where they are a lot easier. You'll see actually if you do that in the, if I'm still doing that in the direction of the enemy, it actually puts the enemy marker down as well. So you can see there's loads of different ways to use these sorts of things, and it's potentially very handy. Another one I've done is under the other section, and it is drop gun. Now drop gun as default isn't assigned to anything, and that is potentially a useful thing to do. So I'm going to use the pause button for demonstration purposes. I picked up a gun that I don't like. I mean, I've got an M1 Garand, I mean, I love that gun, but let's just say it's a bolt action or something you're not a fan of. You picked up a shotgun by accident. Obviously you can go into your inventory and you can drag it out. That's a pain because that's 2 buttons, but now with this single button I can drop my guns. I can drop all my guns and go just hammer mad. Well, you wouldn't want to do that necessarily, but if you picked up a gun by accident and heat a battle or a mission, you can easily drop it. Obviously you can press and hold F to pick that weapon up, or pick up another weapon that's an alternative, and I'll show you why that's potentially a problem. Press and hold F on PC allows you to swap out one of the weapons that you're carrying in your hand currently for one that's already here. Where's a weapon? I dropped a weapon over here on the floor earlier, SVT. So I want to pick up this SVT and place it on my M1 carbine, but doing that then backfires, because now I've put an ice shield on top of it, or in that area, and if the ammo's on the floor, as I found while I was playing the game, that's a bit of a problem. So you do need to think about the way you're programming the extra button presses and the impact that's going to have or potentially on your gameplay, because another thing I found was that with the space logic, when I was jumping too much to climb up a building, a tall building for example, if you just jump in and you're trying to climb up to the top of a tower or something like that, you'll find that you're actually triple tapping or double tapping quite quickly, so that the grenades actually don't get thrown when you don't mean them to. So it's worth practicing around with these sorts of things and trying to work out what'll work for you and what's useful. However, it is interesting to dive into this menu because other things I've found is that there's a next main weapon option, which is again blank as default. On a gamepad it's fast press Y. Next main weapon, or next weapon, sorry, is down usually on the scroll wheel. Previous weapon is up, so if you go up I get to the grand and then I go through the whole lot, and you can go up and down. But the problem I found sometimes is in the heat of battle I not necessarily know whether I'm on 1 or 2, and I might end up scrolling in the wrong direction and end up with my hammer out when I might wanted to have a pistol out or something like that. So what you can do, which is pretty cool, is you can go into the weapons one. Now, next main weapon I want to have as scroll down. Okay, now it's saying it won't work. But what you can do here is you can change that. I'm going to scroll down as the next weapon, but I'm going to change that to double tap. And now I've got previous weapon is up, next main weapon, which means either the M1 Garand or the SVT. No, M1 Carbine or SVT. No, Garand and Carbine switch them back. So if I scroll down, I can only ever go between those two guns now, Garand and Carbine. As a single scroll, I'm only getting those, but if I keep scrolling fast, I end up getting the pistol and the hammer out. So it's still possible. And you can scroll up. And obviously I can press 3 now. So what I've done is I've made it more difficult for myself to accidentally equip my hammer or my pistol. Instead, I'm going to stick with those two main weapons if I'm scrolling down. And I do find that the scroll between things, obviously I can still do 1, 2, 3, 4 on the keyboard. But these options to have the different abilities or different buttons for it means that you can set up and change things the way you want them and make them different. Another thing that I did is the usability button. So you can see the usability button here. Generally I had that as mouse button 4, so the rear side mouse button on my mouse. I found that if I was pressing my mouse a bit too aggressively in the heat of battle, sometimes I accidentally set off my ability when I didn't mean to, and then I'm suddenly using bullet time by accident. I've just wasted 80 souls, which is really expensive. So now what I've done is I've made it so that you have to press and hold instead. So I can't just tap it, I have to press and hold it, and it takes time for it then to activate, and therefore I won't accidentally misuse it. Now this again is open to problems, so if you're using Viper or Ocelot for example, generally speaking, if you're using that ability you want to do it in a hurry, so having to press and hold doesn't necessarily work. But the fact that you can change it and you can change the way it works, whether it's double tap, triple tap, fast press or whatever, means that you can customize the keys a lot more detail than you would as default, and it makes it a lot quicker to work than the way you want it to. And I think that's potentially really good fun to explore and play around with, and that's another highlight of this game, is that it's so customizable and those different controls can be set up in a multitude of ways, but also that there's buttons in here that aren't as default selected, like that drop gun one, which is potentially really useful just to be able to drop your gun. It sounds like something so basic, but it saves you going into the inventory and dragging it out, and makes it a lot easier to, even if it's like you've just revived your teammates at a fire pit, they haven't got a weapon, you want to give them one so that they've got something to go on with and start killing enemies. Now, instead of having to get your inventory out and potentially make it so you can't see any enemies that are coming up on you, all you got to do is press a button. Yes, they won't get any magazines, they're only going to get the gun that's on the ground, but if it's full they've got one clip at least, so that's something. So these sorts of tricks will hopefully be useful to you. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and be sure to check me out on Twitch, where you can see me every Friday and Saturday in this lovely prawn suit having good fun. Thanks for watching.